One gunshot, fired under the bright daylight, changed everything. The midday sun hung high over Utah Valley University on September 10, 2025. Students gathered in the auditorium courtyard, the air buzzing with excitement. Charlie Kirk, a public figure known for his lectures and debates, had just taken the stage. The setting was open, exposed, with campus rooftops surrounding the square. Unbeknownst to the audience, high above, a figure had already taken position. Tyler James Robinson, 22, had climbed onto a nearby rooftop earlier that day. He carried with him a Mauser 30-06 bolt-action rifle, carefully wrapped in a towel to disguise it during his approach. Witnesses later recalled seeing a man crouching, but at the time it seemed harmless, just another student lingering in the background. Robinson's movements were deliberate. He unwrapped the weapon, fitted the scope, and prepared for a shot he had likely rehearsed in his mind countless times. The crowd below laughed and clapped. Unaware of the danger, Robinson steadied himself, slowed his breathing, and peered through the crosshairs. From nearly 200 yards away, the stage was a clear target. At precisely 12:37 p.m., the crack of a single gunshot split the air. Kirk collapsed instantly. The crowd screamed, chaos erupting in waves as students ducked for cover. For investigators, the method was cold and precise. Robinson had chosen an elevated position, the angle giving him both range and cover. Surveillance cameras later showed him lowering the weapon quickly, then retreating. To anyone watching, the moment was pure panic. And as I picture that scene, I can't help but think, one calculated squeeze of a trigger has the power to unravel hundreds of lives in an instant. While police rushed toward the stage, Robinson slipped from the rooftop. He had planned the exit, a change of clothing, hidden in a bag, a route down through a service ladder, and a calm walk into the afternoon crowd. Within minutes, he was gone. That single shot, fired in broad daylight, set off one of the most urgent manhunts in recent Utah history. Sometimes, the face of a killer hides in plain sight. The manhunt that followed the rooftop shooting was immediate and relentless. Utah County Police worked through the night, combing through surveillance footage, interviewing students, and piecing together fragments of evidence. Among the shaky cell phone videos and security camera clips, one figure stood out, a young man with a distinct frame and hurried movements, descending from a campus rooftop minutes after the shot rang out. The images were grainy, but they carried a haunting clarity for one person, the suspect's own father. When law enforcement released the photos to the public, a family in Washington, Utah, watched the news in silence. Tyler Robinson's father froze. He knew the way his son walked, the shape of his shoulders, the curve of his jaw. There was no mistaking it. Tyler had always been quiet, even withdrawn at times, but in the weeks leading up to the shooting, family members recalled subtle changes. He had grown more secretive, spending long hours online, and often disappearing into the night without explanation. Still, no one imagined he would climb a rooftop with a rifle and pull the trigger. The day after the shooting, a breakthrough came. A family member confided to police that Tyler had returned home acting strangely. In fragments of conversation, he had implied involvement, hinting at a gun, at something terrible he had done. Alarmed, the family reached out to a close friend, who in turn contacted the authorities. That call sealed the case. Investigators moved swiftly. They cross-referenced the father's recognition with digital evidence. Discord messages between Tyler and his roommate, discussing a rifle hidden at a drop point and wrapped in a towel. The pieces fit too neatly to ignore. Surveillance, testimony, and online traces painted the same picture. Tyler Robinson was their man. On the evening of September 11th, police closed in. Tyler was found not in flight across state lines, but near his hometown, disoriented, almost resigned. Witnesses later said he offered little resistance when officers surrounded him. It was as if he had been waiting. And here, I can't help but think, sometimes the cruelest twist is that those who know us best, our own family, are the ones forced to reveal the darkest truth. With Robinson in custody, the crime now had a name, a face, and a chilling backstory. But the investigation was only beginning. Sometimes, the smallest details whisper the loudest secrets. As detectives processed the scene, they noticed something unusual scattered near the rooftop perch where the shot had been fired. Amid the dust and gravel lay not just ordinary shell casings, but casings that had been deliberately marked. Each one carried hand-etched words, phrases that seemed both mocking and symbolic. One read, "Hey fascist, catch." Another, "Bella ciao," a phrase tied to resistance songs of another era. A third carried nothing but a crude joke scratched into its brass surface. To investigators, this was not random graffiti. It was a signature. The care it took to inscribe such small objects suggested preparation, patience, and a disturbing intent to leave behind a message. The bullets themselves were not only weapons, they were statements. Forensic teams traced the weapon, a Mauser 30-06 bolt-action rifle, fitted with a scope. It was an old firearm, not the kind typically used in quick crimes of impulse. This was a hunter's weapon, designed for precision. The fact that Robinson had chosen it, carried it across campus hidden in a towel, and placed himself in an elevated position revealed a chilling degree of planning. The Discord messages pulled from his digital trail deepened the story. In conversations with a roommate, Tyler discussed retrieving the rifle from a concealed location, referred to as a drop point. He even mentioned wrapping the gun in a towel to avoid drawing attention. The words were casual, almost mundane, but they revealed a mind carefully laying out the steps of an operation. Detectives imagined the moment on that rooftop. Tyler, kneeling behind cover, unwrapping the weapon, his hands moving with precision, his focus narrowed on a single figure hundreds of feet away. Around him, in his pocket or bag, were these casings, each etched with its message, waiting to be loaded, fired, or discarded. It was ritualistic, almost theatrical, as if he wanted to be remembered not just for the act, but for the strange artifacts he left behind. And in that detail, I find the most unsettling truth. Sometimes evil doesn't just want to kill, it wants to speak. These clues became the backbone of the prosecution's case. They showed intent, preparation, and a desire for meaning far beyond a single gunshot. To investigators, it proved that Robinson wasn't simply lashing out. He was making a statement written in brass and blood. The truth about a killer often hides in the quiet moments before the crime. In the days leading up to the shooting, Tyler Robinson's behavior became more erratic. He was restless at home, pacing at night, and spending long hours glued to his computer. His family noticed the change but brushed it off as stress or youthful frustration. Only later would they realize those moments were the storm clouds before the strike. At one family dinner, Tyler's father recalled, his son mentioned the upcoming event at Utah Valley University. His tone had been sharp, his words curt, and though no one at the table pressed him, there was an unease in the air. It was not a full confession, but a hint, like a shadow slipping under the door. For detectives, that conversation became a chilling glimpse into his mindset. Investigators pieced together additional fragments from digital footprints. In chat logs, Tyler spoke of firearms with calculated detail. He knew the specifications of his Mauser, the distance it could shoot, the way the scope aligned with his vision. These weren't idle thoughts. They were rehearsals. One message even referenced wrapping ammunition, as though the physical act of preparing each round gave the plan its final weight. Friends who were later interviewed described Tyler as reserved, but not outwardly aggressive. They spoke of someone who bottled his thoughts, someone who seemed to live more in his head than in the world around him. That isolation, detectives suggested, created a dangerous vacuum, one where dark thoughts could grow unchecked. On the rooftop, when he raised the rifle and exhaled, Tyler wasn't acting in a moment of passion. He was carrying out something conceived in silence, nurtured in secrecy. His motive, though tangled in personal frustrations and private beliefs, boiled down to a chilling simplicity. He wanted to act, to make his mark in a way no one could ignore. And here, I can't help but reflect, when anger turns into obsession, silence can become more dangerous than shouting. For law enforcement, the motive wasn't about one dinner table comment or one online message. It was the accumulation of choices, the weapon selected, the messages etched on casings, the rooftop vantage point, and the calm retreat afterward. Together, they painted the picture of a young man who had crossed the line from discontent to deadly intent. Every crime leaves behind more than evidence. It leaves scars that never fade. When Tyler Robinson was taken into custody on September 11, 2025, the relief was immediate but heavy. Utah County Sheriff's deputies had tracked him down near his hometown. He didn't resist. He looked pale, almost drained, as if the weight of his actions had already pressed the fight out of him. For investigators, the arrest ended a frantic search, but for the community, the real reckoning was just beginning. The charges were swift and severe. Robinson faced aggravated murder, unlawful use of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. Each charge carried years, if not life, in prison, but beyond the legal system. The impact was deeper. Students who had been present during the shooting described recurring nightmares and an inability to return to campus without looking over their shoulders. Families, friends, and faculty all carried the memory of that single gunshot echoing in daylight. Evidence stacked high against Robinson, the rifle traced back to him, the etchings on shell casings tying his hand to the crime, the digital messages laying out preparation, even the testimony of his own father, who had identified him from security footage, reinforced the case. Prosecutors didn't just see a young man who made a mistake. They saw a deliberate act, a planned execution carried out in public. Robinson sat in his cell, awaiting trial, a 22-year-old whose life was now defined by a rooftop, a rifle, and one irreversible choice. Neighbors who had once waved at him on quiet suburban streets now whispered in disbelief. His family, torn between love and horror, lived with the reality that their son was not just accused, but caught in a crime that had shaken the nation. And in that tragic twist, I can't help but feel the punishment extends beyond prison bars, falling on everyone who ever knew his face or name. The broader community wrestled with questions of safety, of vigilance, of how an ordinary young man had turned into a calculated shooter. For the courts, the path forward was clear: a trial, a sentence, and justice. But for those who lived through the chaos of that day, justice could never fully erase the sound of a single shot fired under the midday sun.